Hi there. I used to always wonder before I went into residential treatment or when I was first starting out in my journey of recovery, what it would be like to be in residential treatment for an eating disorder. And I would look at different videos and things like that. And so I wanted to make a video today that was basically just what a day in the life of residential treatment is like. Obviously, every treatment center is completely different. Every person's experience is going to be different, but this was just my own personal experience. And I know that typically the model for residential treatment is pretty similar across the board. So I just kind of wanted to go through what a daily schedule looked like. Obviously Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The days of the week varied depending on like what groups we would have and things like that. But the weekends we had off, so we would have usually like 1 to 2 groups on Saturdays and then no groups on Sundays, and we would be allowed to like have our phones and things like that. But the way that the days looked basically is just this. I'm just going to kind of go through hourly because that's kind of how I remember it working. But basically at 7 a.m. you were woken up by a staff member that usually came into your room and tried to be gentle about waking you up, but I sleep like a boulder, so they had to usually give me a pretty firm Millicent, like, wake up, it's time to get up. I would get up, I would put on the hospital gown that they had provided for me on my first day, and I would go downstairs, usually wrapped in a blanket or holding a huge stuffed animal or something, and I would go to the nurse's station and get my vitals taken. So every morning and every evening you get your vitals taken in treatment. So that's basically just the blood pressure cuff, the temperature, and your weight. Obviously you're not allowed to see your weight, and even though I was in treatment for 8 weeks, I still don't know what a good blood pressure is or isn't, so I could have learned. I should have. But basically at 7 you wake up, get your vitals taken, and then usually I would go upstairs, get ready, change into my clothes for the day, ask them to unlock the bathroom so I could brush my teeth, wash my face, things like that. And then around like 7:30 I was usually ready to go. I would make up my bed, kind of tidy everything up, and then I would go downstairs and typically read a book or talk with one of my friends who was also a patient, and we would just talk. And then around 8 a.m. they would call us in for breakfast prep. So the kitchens were always locked. You had to be accompanied if you were going to go into them. So they would unlock the kitchen and we would basically start making our breakfasts. For breakfast and lunch and any snacks throughout the day, you get to decide what you eat. Obviously you don't get full freedom. You have a certain meal plan given to you by a dietitian, so everybody has different type of parameters that they have, and they kind of would watch us, and we would have to measure out things in the kitchen and get used to kind of like learning, I guess, what proper amounts of food and proper meals looked like. So we would make our meals. It would usually take like 15 to 20 minutes, and then if you finished early you would just kind of wait, and then they would have us all pick up our plates, go to the breakfast table, sit down, and from 8 to like 8:30, or no, it was like 8:25ish to 9 we would eat breakfast. And then after breakfast we would have our first group of the day, which was processing. Processing was basically just kind of like a general, how's everybody feeling right now, what's going on, has there been any problems within the house that we need to talk about, things like that. And it was kind of just like, okay, like what are your guys' intentions for the day and things like that, to kind of get the wheels going. After processing group around 10 a.m. let me check, hold on, I had to write it all out because I was like, I'm gonna forget otherwise. At 10 a.m. after our first group, we would have morning snack. Morning snack was optional for some patients and then mandatory for others. So it depended on your meal plan compliance. So if I was doing really good with my meal plan compliance, I was like 80% and above, typically I wouldn't have to do morning snack. But for the first like 2 weeks, I did have to do morning snack. We would prepare that, then we would eat it, do our whatever, and then there would be a smoke break / water, like push fluids time after that. So the smoke break was for patients that smoked, so it was about 2 times a day they could go outside, have a cigarette, and then those of us who didn't smoke would just kind of chill out inside. I would do my push fluids then, which is basically where you just like drink an allotted amount of water, and because you aren't allowed to have a water bottle throughout the day, which is a pain. That's the worst thing ever, but you actually kind of get used to drinking on a schedule. It's weird. After that, at 11, we would have another group. Usually it was one of our like DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or occasionally we would do kind of like a weird like obscure ones. So it would be like the dietitian gets to lead a group, or a nurse gets to lead the group, and kind of do like a nursing group. After that, at 12, we would start prep for lunch. We would start prep, and then we would eat around 12:30 to 1. At 1, on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, we would have yoga. So afterwards, one of the yoga instructors would come in, she'd take us from the lunch table, and then we'd go upstairs and do yoga. And they actually said a couple of times that the reason they did yoga shortly after lunch was because it was kind of like a calming down thing with our bodies, to kind of be like, hey, you just ate a lot of food, now we're gonna kind of like mellow out, kind of like get in touch with our bodies, so we're not uncomfortable with the feeling of being full. And at first it was very uncomfortable for me, and for a lot of the weeks actually, it was very uncomfortable to do yoga while your stomach's full and you're not used to your stomach being full and you're feeling nauseous. So it was always very mellow yoga. We were never allowed to do anything crazy, because any working out was prohibited strictly. You could go on a walk, but only if you earned it. And even then, I think I earned it like 4 weeks in, and I still didn't really go on it because it was just like not really practical. After that, so after the yoga or whatever, we would come downstairs, we would fill out worksheets about the yoga class, we would do push fluids again, then there would be another smoke break, and so that was around like 2 at that point. I would typically be pulled at this time for my individual therapy session or my dietitian session. So within the residential houses, there are like 4 therapists, and the patients are divided up amongst those therapists. So like throughout the day, randomly, like your therapist would pull you. You had 3 individual therapy sessions a week, and then 2 individual sessions with the dietitian a week. So that was like basically every day you were getting pulled out at some point for an individual session. So usually after yoga and those push fluids, I would have my own therapy session or my dietitian session. Then at 3:15 we would have afternoon snack, which was always pretty chill. Usually you only had to sit at the table like 15 minutes. Typically, I'm trying to think of like what I would eat for snacks. I ate a lot of graham crackers in treatment. I don't know why. I just like really liked graham crackers, but they actually wouldn't let you eat the same thing a ton. So like if I really liked graham crackers, I could usually only eat graham crackers like twice a week if I wanted to, which was very frustrating because I like routine in my meals and things like that. But anyways, that's beside the point. After snack, we would have usually one more group. That would be something along the lines of, we had drama therapy or movement therapy, which was like drama therapy was a lot of like just different kind of, I don't want to say like improv games because it was the saddest version of improv, but I really liked this group because a lot of it was kind of like speaking in metaphors and kind of things like that. We would have music group around this time too, later in the evening. Music group was always really fun for me too. It was anything from, we had 2 different girls that would come in, and they had their guitars and bags of tambourines and drums and stuff, and it was really awkward because the group that I was like in treatment with was like not about it, and I was like really into it. So like they pulled out the tambourines and I'm like the only one sitting in the group hitting a tambourine. It's whatever. You have to entertain yourself somehow. But we would do kind of a group like that. So later in the day was usually my favorite groups. It would be like the art groups, the movement therapy, dance therapy, stuff like that that I like really kind of, I enjoy therapy if it's through kind of like a creative means, because it just kind of helps. It's just how my brain works, and it helps me out a lot. So then we would have one after that, like last group, then we would have our last process group, so that would be around 5 o'clock. And during that group, basically throughout the week, every night for dinner, dinners were the ones where it was like, this was a pre-planned meal. Like they have a whole list of recipes, and I think while I was there, they went through the whole book once. So they have like a huge pamphlet of them. And every single night, basically, we have a schedule. So like say if there were like 4 patients in there, it would switch off day by day. So like one day I would be doing dishes, but I wouldn't have to make dinner. Or I would be doing dishes one day and then someone else would do it the next. And then, so like every night though, we switched off who helped make dinner. So there was like a diet tech who was kind of like an MHW, which is the mental health worker, but she was purely for like the kitchen. So they would help you cook the meal and teach you how to cook it. And you would prepare dinner for everybody basically. And then, after the process group, everybody would come in, get their plates and their water for dinner, and then we would all sit down for dinner, eat dinner, and then after dinner we would break for that, and you would do your dishes, whatever you had to do. If you had to supplement because you didn't finish a meal, you would do that. But after dinner, it was kind of a I was always in a huge rush to get from dinner to the nurse's station for my nightly vitals, because after your nightly vitals is when you get your phone, and that's when the visiting hours start. So for me, I was always really antsy to figure out, okay, like already my friend's gonna come visit tonight, I want to get on my phone. And then after that, visiting hours started at 7:30 and lasted until, I think they could technically stay until, I want to say like 9:30 or 10, but in the middle of visiting hours there would always be a push fluid. So like I'd be hanging out with my friends, and then one of the MHWs would pop in and be like, hey, it's time for push fluids, and then I'd vanish, chug water as fast as I could, and then come back. After visiting hours were over, or if I didn't have a visitor that night, I mean, we would do things. We would watch movies, Netflix, TV shows. I played a ton of bananagrams for some reason. That was just like my friend and I's, my really good friend that I made in treatment, that was like our thing. We loved bananagrams and we loved puzzles. There was also a fair amount of free time in between groups. There would probably be like, occasionally there would be like 10-15 minutes in between stuff while other people were doing a smoke break. And that's the time when I would read my books. I would paint a lot. I did a ton of, I did so many crafts, just every craft you could imagine I did, because they had a craft room. And so I remember the day that they like toured me around there on my first day, I was like, craft room, noted, I'm gonna be in there a lot. So I would make like a lot of clay figures. I had too much going on. I had a lot going on, but considering the fact that I had nothing going on, I had a lot going on. And we would watch TV. The TV shows all had to be approved. It had to be something that kind of everybody wanted to watch. You needed to kind of make sure that all the patients were getting their turn and things like that. And then around 10 o'clock, depending on the night staff that was working, because occasionally if it was like one of like the chill like staffs that was working, they'd kind of hang out, like you didn't necessarily have to go upstairs yet. I was typically beat tired by the end of the day, because you wake up at 7 a.m. and all day you are talking about the hardest things in your life. So it was pretty exhausting actually. Like my first couple of days there, I was like really blown away by how tired I was all the time. But that is typically what a day looks like. So then after dinner, I would go upstairs, take a shower, come back down, read a book with my friend, watch TV, talk to some of the staff. And this is kind of like, in the everyday is kind of where I found myself to appreciate and love the staff a lot, because there was something very strange about being in treatment, and when they would get off their shift, you knew they were going home. And it was weird, because it was like, my life is here right now. Like I'm stuck here, whatever, like all that kind of thing. Like those thoughts, it was very scary at times, but like a lot of times at night and just throughout the day, like you really do grow to value those mental health care workers that are like there with you all the time and trying to make sure you feel loved and seen. And I had a lot of those. Like my treatment center was really great. So that's what a day looks like. I would usually be asleep by like 11:15, 11:30, depending on if I wanted to read. And every night throughout the night, and every day throughout the day, every 15 minutes they do checks on you. So they come in, they basically see what you're doing and then take a note of it. Which at night gets a little bit crazy, because depending on the MHW that was working that night, they would come in with like either a flashlight or they literally just like look in the door. So you kind of got used to sleeping through people just walking into the room and looking at you every 15 minutes. But that is a day in the life of residential treatment. If you have any other questions about residential treatment, I'd love to answer them, just to kind of make you feel less afraid about maybe going into treatment. Or if you're just curious about it, if you're just like, I didn't even know this was a thing, that's what this is for. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be continuing my debunking diet series on Tuesday of next week, and I will see you later. Thank you so much.